Okay, so I'm Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and transportation planner that works with NDOT. I'm a consultant that works with NDOT to help facilitate the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program. So we're here to talk to you all about Warfield Drive, which was selected for traffic calming, we have some background information to go over, and then we have a proposed plan to show you and get some feedback, and then we'll talk about next steps. So as we go along, feel free to put any questions you have in the chat box. We'll pause and go over those as we need to. And also, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and ask those questions. And I see a number of people have joined by phone. We do have some slides we're going over, so if you're able to join online, the WebEx meeting, hopefully you're able to see these slides. But again, we've recorded these meetings, and it'll be posted in the next week or so after this meeting. So let's get started. We're here to talk about Warfield Drive, but what is traffic calming? The Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program focuses on residential streets, just like Warfield, and what we're doing with this is physical solutions that try to achieve slower, lower speeds over the length of the street. So we're primarily targeting speed reduction with the tools that we have in NDOT's toolbox. We often talk about the 3 E's of traffic calming being education, enforcement, and engineering. Education, part of that is these meetings, educating the public about traffic calming and the reasons why slower speeds are safer. Enforcement, that's the job that the police department does. And you know, we wish they could enforce speeding on every street all day long throughout the county, but it's just not possible. But they are our partners in this. But NDOT focuses on the engineering of the street. How do we modify the street, enhance the street to achieve slower speeds? This infographic is explaining the correlation between safety, vision zero, and vehicle speeding. So on the left side, it's showing a vehicle speed at 25 miles per hour. A pedestrian that may be hit by that vehicle would have an 89% chance of survival. And then as the speed goes up, the chance of survival goes down significantly. So at 35 miles per hour, only a 68% chance of survival. And at 45 miles per hour, only a 35% chance of survival. And these are some national statistics that we look at. So I think that's pretty obvious that, you know, the higher the speed, the pedestrian's chance of survival is pretty it is lower, but also at slower speeds, a driver has a greater chance to avoid the collision altogether because the cone of vision is wider, so you can see further outside the street or the drive lane. Also, your reaction time is longer at a slower speed, so crashes are more avoidable at lower speeds. So overall, speeding leads to higher crashes and more severe crashes, and we're trying to target that through this program. The Neighborhood Street program is application-based, and there's really a high demand throughout Davidson County. We have a number of applications that have streets that have applied for the program, and in spring of 2024 we selected 25 neighborhood streets, Warfield being one of those streets that was selected based on our prioritization process. This map is representing the streets throughout the city that have applied for traffic calming. Outside of the traffic calming program, we like to direct people to the Hub Nashville. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really great tool and resource for citizens to reach the correct department to address service issues things like your trash didn't get picked up, or a street light is out, the storm drain is clogged and needs to be corrected, or sign's been knocked down, things like that. It's a great way to reach the right department. It disseminates that information and gets the service request answered. There's also ability to request new things like new signs and new traffic signals and so forth. So it's not just NDOT, it's all departments throughout Nashville, and you can reach that by calling 311 or online at hub.nashville.gov. There's also a app you can download to your smartphone, and you get a service request number, something that you can follow up on if needed. So it's just a really great tool. So let's go back to traffic calming now and talk about our prioritization process. We want to give a little bit of background about how Warfield was selected in the program. What happens is when an application is submitted for traffic calming, NDOT goes through this process of data collection and ranking streets based on these 5 criteria. So it's essentially a 100-point scale, and they're weighted as shown in this pie chart, with vehicular speeds receiving 45% of the score. And what we do is we measure the speed on every street that's asked for traffic calming or applied for traffic calming that's eligible, and compares the 85th percentile speed over 25 miles per hour, which is our target speed for residential streets in Nashville. Then we also look at volume. That's worth 25% of the score. We also look at non-driver accommodation. So whether the street has sidewalks on it, or it has, so a lack of sidewalks gets higher scores, or the presence of bikeways and greenways and bus routes near the street where we would expect more people to be walking to and from those. We're utilizing those types of other modes of transportation. Then we also look at the vulnerable user injury and fatalities that may have occurred on the street. So we look back at 10 years worth of pedestrian, bicycle injury and fatality data to see if there's been a crash on that street. And that's worth 10% of the score. And we also look at trip destinations. That's worth 5% of the score. So are there parks near the street, schools, libraries, places where we would expect people to be walking to and from the street? So based on this criteria, Warfield Drive was scored amongst 400 or 500 other streets, and it scored in the top 25, and therefore was selected for traffic calming in this round. So Warfield Drive, and what we're talking about, the section or the street of Warfield is between Hillsborough Pike and Lone Oak Road. So I just have a snapshot view of the street, and you all live there, so you're familiar with it, but want to show you some of the data that we collected. The 85th percentile speed we measured was 30 miles per hour. That's kind of typical for a speed limit of 25 or close to what we're targeting. We'd really like it to be 25 miles per hour, but I want to explain what the 85th percentile speed means. It means that 85% of the traffic that we measured across the day, the 24-hour period, was going 30 miles per hour or below. But it means that 15% of the traffic was going above 30 miles per hour. And our speed limit is 25. Then we measured the volume, the full daily volume at around 3,700 vehicles per day. That's both directions for a 24-hour period. The street width's pretty narrow. It does have some markings, but the street width's, in the 21, 23 foot range without any shoulders. There's no sidewalks. And then we really have a high density of driveways most of the street. And this street is classified as a local street. So it is eligible for traffic calming and was scored high enough to need it based on our prioritization metrics. So here's a map of Warfield Drive and our segment that we're talking about. I've highlighted that in green. This map is taken from NDOT's online tracker map that keeps track of all the projects and streets that have applied for traffic calming and then where they are in the program. So nearby Warfield, we have several streets that have applied for the program, gone through the process, and have it installed. Castleman being one of those, Overhill, Oriole Place. Those are streets that have completed with vertical measures, meaning speed cushions, and we'll go over those in a minute. But Warfield Drive is green, and it's in the meeting and design phase of the program. So let's talk about our toolkit real quick. I mentioned speed cushions. Speed cushions are our primary tool that we use because they're so effective. And residents, we get a lot of good feedback that residents like them. And so oftentimes when residents or streets apply for traffic calming, this is kind of what they have in mind, we believe, based on our experience. But speed cushions are rubber modular devices that are drilled into the pavement and formed into several different types of configurations. But the defining characteristic of speed cushions is that they have these gaps between them to better accommodate emergency vehicle responses. So those larger emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances have a slightly wider wheelbase that is more easily straddling these cushions, whereas passenger cars and pickup trucks have a narrower wheelbase and are still affected by the cushion. So that's the primary reason why NDOT likes to use this tool. So they are 3 inches high at their highest. They're 6 feet wide, and then we arrange them in different lengths depending on the street, the volume, characteristics on the street. We primarily use the 7 foot in more urban areas, and then the 10.5 foot elsewhere. But as you can see in these pictures, there's a number of ways we can configure them, whether that be 2, 1 in each lane if we don't have really wide lanes or shoulders to speak of. We also can configure them in 3 wide if the street and the pavement width is wide enough. They have pavement markings on these cushions to make them visible and show the direction of travel with the arrows. And then the picture on the bottom right, the street has center line, so the speed cushion also incorporates the center line. And then in places where we have bike lanes that we want to protect, we'll incorporate those white flexible delineator posts. And this is one configuration that we use. There's other ways that we incorporate that as well. And then we also utilize warning signage with the cushions to make sure that they're visible. And then speed tables are made of similar material, but they are typically longer, but as you see in these pictures, they go across the full width of the street instead of having the gaps for emergency vehicles. I believe a couple of these are installed on Leland. You may have encountered sort of nearby your neighborhood. I think it's further north though. So NDOT has done some before and after studies of these vertical measures to see how well they're working on locally. And I'm showing 2 graphs here on your screen. The graph on the left is a comparison of the average speed before and after cushions were installed. The before for the streets we did our before and after study for, the before was 31 miles per hour. And then after the install, the average speed went down to 22 miles per hour. And then on the right side is that 85th percentile speed that I spoke about earlier. So the before average was 37 miles per hour, and then after the cushions were installed, it went down to 25 miles per hour. So that's kind of what we expect when we install these measures. And I do want to go back because I failed to mention something here about the speed cushions, and the same is true for the tables, that when we install these, there's a lot of things that we're looking at on where to locate them, but we usually install them in a series so that we get a consistent speed along the length of the street. We don't just put one set on the street and expect drivers to slow down for the length. So when you encounter these, you will usually encounter them in a series of 400 feet apart or so. And then we're also very cognizant of driveways. We try to space them away from driveways so that when you're backing or turning in and out of your driveway, you're not backing over them in a kind of angled way. So that's some of the criteria we look at, as well as vertical grade. We can't install them on steep hills or in curves, horizontal curves of the roadway. So just want to put that out there because some of this does affect or comes into play in the design for Warfield. So radar feedback signs is a tool we also use in this program. They are, you've seen them probably on Lone Oak nearby, where the sign shows a vehicle's speed as the driver approaches to remind them of the speed limit and how fast they are going. We've seen some success with these tools as well, with average reduction speed of 6 miles per hour and the 85th percentile speed coming down around 7 miles per hour. These are typically installed on streets with higher speed, or in places or streets where vertical measures are not where we can't install those, or the neighborhood would rather see these types of measures. Narrowing with pavement. Sometimes we have wide streets with no marking, so we can incorporate edge lines to kind of narrow the travel way. Not really applicable for Warfield. We also, in some areas where we have these wide radii, we can do some bulb outs to narrow the intersection. We use paint and flexible delineator posts, like you see in these pictures, to physically narrow the intersection. It also identifies and restricts parking too close to an intersection through that. Then chicanes. These are where we incorporate some horizontal deflection and curvature to an otherwise straight street, usually done by alternating on-street parking from one side of the street to the other. An example you may be familiar with is Fairfax Avenue up in the Hillsborough Village area. But by adding that curvature to the road, drivers tend to slow down to stay in their lane. Traffic circles is another tool we use in this program. It's an intersection treatment. These are circular islands that are installed in the center of an intersection, and drivers drive around them, or similar to a roundabout. And they're smaller islands. We do these with rubber curbs and asphalt now, as you see in these pictures. We kind of need all the right kind of dimensions of an intersection to successfully use this tool. All right, that's it on our toolbox. So I want to jump in and start talking about our proposed concept plan for Warfield Drive. And I'll go over it, and then we may have some questions and dialogue here to get some feedback. Let me first explain kind of where we are. That north arrow is up on this screen. And then to the left where you have the traffic signal, that's Hillsborough Pike, so that's the west side of the street. And then Warfield is highlighted in pink. And then to the right is Lone Oak, which Warfield stops at Lone Oak. And then we're showing some other stop signs of where Kimbark intersects at Warfield, and those being stops for the Kimbark side, not Warfield. So with the layout of the street, it's got some S-curves in it that we have to work around, also very dense driveways, but we do think that we could install about 5 sets of speed cushions. They're spaced at appropriate lengths, around 400, 500 feet apart, anywhere from 300 to 500 feet apart, which is good spacing to get that consistent speed along the length of the street. We're targeting that 25 miles per hour. And then based on the characteristics of the street, the width of the street, the driveways that we're sort of contending with here on parts of the street, we think these would most likely be 1 cushion in each lane. How you see this picture here on the top right, but they would be the shorter length, and I have a picture, some more pictures here showing the 7-foot long cushions to help us kind of stay away from driveways. These are also a little bit more, they get slightly slower speeds, we believe, because they're a little shorter and the design speed is just a little lower. And then, of course, we'll incorporate the speed cushion warning signs like you see in the picture here. So before I go further, let's see if we have any questions. Feel free to unmute, ask any questions you have. And then we'll try to answer those, and then we can talk about next steps. We have yes.
Yeah, this is Pat Cooper, and I live at 1803 Warfield. Just, I don't know. I guess I'm surprised that we would be putting cushions in on the street because the S-curve that we do have, it's kind of a natural traffic calmer, and it just, I think you said there were going to be 5 seat cushions on this street?
5 sets is what I was saying.
That just seems, excessive for the street. But I think the biggest problem with our street is that we do not have sidewalks. There is a lot of foot traffic. I mean, I love to walk around the neighborhood too, and it's very difficult on Warfield because there are not sidewalks. So I guess my question would be, if we do get these seat cushions, which it kind of sounds like that's going to happen whether we want it or not, will they be there forever? Is this a temporary thing?
Yeah,
Are they temporary? Will we get sidewalks? I guess that's my question.
Sure. I'll start with the sidewalks. That has also been raised in the chat box. So sidewalks is not part of this program. So that's a separate program altogether, and has its own methodology for identifying priority sidewalks. So we're not looking at sidewalks as part of this program, essentially.
Okay, well, you just mentioned them earlier, that it's, one of the things is the lack of sidewalks.
Right.
Okay.
The presence of traffic calming is not going to keep you from getting sidewalks if that the street has sidewalks. So we do look at whether there are sidewalks or not, because if there's no sidewalks, like on Warfield, that tends to mean that the street is essentially shared between vehicles and cyclists and pedestrians. So a greater need for slower speeds because of that. So that's why it's in our prioritization methodology. And then they are essentially temporary. I mean, we don't take them out, but just the nature of how they're made, they're rubber, they're drilled into the pavement. NDOT likes that material and installation because they can be picked up and moved. If the street's going to be repaved at any point, the contractor can remove the cushions, store them during the paving process, and then put them back. So that investment is not lost because the street got repaved. Because you may have encountered in other cities or elsewhere where these are actually made of asphalt. So that is, so if speed cushions were to be installed on your street, and then there was a desire to have them removed, we go through the same process of getting them installed as getting removed, which is a voting process. We have a ballot that we vote. The property owners on the street have an opportunity to vote. And I'm going to go over that in my next few slides about how this goes from this concept that we're presenting to being installed, or whether we need to make some adjustments to the plan and come back to you all. So I've got a couple of questions. Let me take a look at these and see if we can get those answered. So there's a question or comment about crosswalk at Lone Oak to safely cross to the sidewalk. Could that be considered? We don't typically incorporate crosswalks through this program, but it's something that you could absolutely put into the Hub Nashville that I talked about earlier and make a request for a crosswalk there. Shared bike lane markers. There are lots of families with small kids on Kimbark and Warfield that will be bike riding age soon. That's awesome. That would also go through the walking and biking program with NDOT. So I would recommend that you make that request through Hub Nashville as well. We have more votes and input for crosswalk at Warfield and Lone Oak. Okay, here's a good comment on the plan that it would be great to have lane lines repainted at Warfield and Hillsborough. They've been mostly worn off for years and creates confusion for drivers turning or going straight. That's good feedback. You're speaking mostly about what's right at the intersection, like the turn arrows and stop line and so forth. I think we can pass that along to the right folks at NDOT to get the maintenance on that worked out. Let's see, a couple more questions from, let's see. Okay, we've got some support for the traffic calming and recognition for that in the straight sections, there probably is some speeding. So, I think that's, I heard our first speaker say that, the curves kind of act as some traffic calming. Yes, that may be true. I think the cushions and the placement is sort of like on the exits to kind of maintain that speed, that slower speed in and out of the curves, because there are some straight sections. So that's kind of what our thought process was on the design layout here. Okay, then I think Randall had a hand raised. If you want to, let's see, go ahead.
Did you say that if in the event that we repave or reline the street, that would just be a simple removal to get it repaved and then put back in place, or do we have to go through a vote?
No, you would get that put back in, they would be put back in place. The vote would be a vote to have them removed if there was some sort of consensus on the street that after they were installed, you wanted them permanently removed, that we would have to ballot the street again to demonstrate that that is the desire. So I hope that answered your question, but yeah, they would just be stored during paving and then put back where they were.
It did, thank you.
hmm and then we have another hand raised. Chuck?
Hey, good evening. A couple comments and then a question. So, one of the big issues that I have is the lack of sidewalks, to just echo what everyone has said, as kind of the primary thing that Warfield needs. Because of those curves that are blind for walkers, joggers, and there's so many kids, so many people with pets, and I'm a daily runner. I've probably almost been killed 20 times in the last year just going around the street because people, it's not a speed thing, it's they're inattentive drivers. Is it an option to close the entryway to the shopping center? Because a lot of the traffic that is excessive speed is going in and out of that shopping center. So again, our traffic problems are driven by Hillsborough Drive because they keep allowing these zoning variances for these, high-rise buildings and that shopping center there, which forces people to use our street as a pass-through street. I would love to see some less invasive measures first, like the radar feedback and actual enforcement every once in a while, rather than install these, because again, without the sidewalks, all this is great, but it really doesn't help the residents. And if I look at the numbers you just gave us, we're 15% of the traffic above the speed limit effectively. Is that enough to warrant such dramatic changes by putting in? And I personally hate these speed cushions because the, they don't seem soft to my car. So um, the global solution needs to be not just this solution, that if enforcement is one of the things you do, then why do I never see any officers give speeding tickets in the area? And I will tell you, it would be easier to enforce the speed limit on Shackleford to slow down the ultimate speed in these other streets. Shackleford and Lawn Oak are where people are speeding and causing, when they make those right or left turns onto other streets, they keep speeding. So I think there's far less invasive ways, and there needs to be a more comprehensive approach. And if we're not getting sidewalks, all of this is still not solving the problem. We have a lot of people that walk. It's a natural gateway to get to places on Hillsborough. And without looking at this in the totality, this is just not going to do much to solve our ultimate problem, in my opinion. I would love to see, start with something less invasive, close that access way to the shopping center, and then see what that does to traffic before you start installing things. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. In this program, we don't close streets, so I'll address that one. Yeah, I understand what you're saying about the traffic from Hillsborough and cutting through Warfield Drive. And then the sidewalks, like I said, this is not, you know, the sidewalk is a separate issue, and so yeah, we're not able to install sidewalks. There's obviously significant cost differences between sidewalks and speed cushions, and our goal and target with this type of design and install would be to slow speeds, so that while pedestrians and vehicles are both utilizing the street, that it is safer. It's not ideal by any means, but we're just trying to slow drivers down. In the S curves, I think something that could be looked at, because you mentioned that they're line curves, is there some trimming of and maintenance of vegetation that could be done to give better visibility around those curves? I think that might be something we could look into, depending on the right of way and so forth. But I appreciate your comments, and this might be a good opportunity for me to talk about the rest of how this program works, and the voting process. And then we can certainly come back to the plan, but I want to make sure everyone understands where we go from here. And our purpose of having these meetings is to get feedback. So if we need to adjust the plan based on the feedback we're getting at this meeting, we are absolutely able to do that within what we have in our toolbox, that is. So let me move on, and then, like I said, we can come back. This is sort of our flow chart for the program. I mentioned earlier that this is application-based. We have 2 cycles per year to apply for the program. And then we go through that process of data collection and prioritizing, and then matching up the selection with the budget that's been allocated for the program at that time or for that year. But we typically will select, the program typically selects 25 streets for traffic calming twice a year, so 50 streets per year. So right now we're in that red bubble at the neighborhood meeting, where we're sharing information about the data, the street, and our concept plan, and then next steps. And then from here, we can go into design, or if we need to retool our concept, then we can do that and then come back and have a second neighborhood meeting. But ultimately, once we get to a design that we want to move forward with this street and the residents on the street, then we will go into the online ballot, which is a voting process that NDOT uses to demonstrate that there is support for the plan that has been proposed. We really only do the voting for physical measures in the street or vertical measures in the street. So speed cushions, speed tables. If we were to do traffic circles, that would be one that would require a ballot. But essentially, if it's just feedback signs or striping, a vote is not necessary. But with this vote, it's if 66% of those that vote in the time of the vote is open, if 66% vote in favor, then the project moves forward towards the construction phase. So essentially, these ballots are mailed to property owners on the street. We have a unique ID to make sure we don't have, duplicate voting and so forth. We have a 6-week window for the voting, and then once that's over, the results of the vote is tallied, and then we determine whether it's moving into construction or not. The construction period is about 8 to 10 months, and that's when NDOT orders the materials to install the project. So we don't have on hand all the time all the materials, because there's, we're doing these all the time, but these projects all the time, but we don't order the materials for that street until we know what the final outcome of the vote is, and then we move forward with the contractor to install it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the voting and the balloting, and then we'll come back to questions. But what happens is a postcard mailer goes out to the property owners, and it has a link and a QR code to the online form ballot. So you have an opportunity to vote yes or no for the project. And the voting, like I said, is open for 6 weeks. The closing date is on the mailer. So when you get it in the mail, you know when the voting closes. We always tell people to vote right away. Don't forget, or because, these postcards might get lost. sitting on your kitchen counter. So go ahead and do it right away and vote yes or no for the project. And then if 66% of the respondents vote yes, then the project moves forward. On this ballot postcard, there's also a phone number to reach NDOT if someone has trouble voting online and needs some assistance there. And then after the vote closes, we tally the results and post them on NDOT's traffic calming website as well. We don't share individual votes or anything, just the totals of and results. Then the ballot zone is all the property owners, residential properties, churches and schools each get one vote. So a property owner that might have multiple properties on the street is just one vote. So one vote per household also. So we will sort for duplicate votes. The unique ID code that is on the postcard will get entered into the form to vote. And then it's only properties that have that are abutting the right-of-way that is affected by the project. So I've kind of highlighted these in yellow. You can see, ignore that red squiggly line. That's just how I select the properties in highlighting that. And then vacant properties are not eligible, businesses are not eligible to vote. So I believe on this street we have 55 eligible properties for voting. So let me take a look here at our questions, see if there's others we need to answer. There's some feedback regarding the sidewalks and acknowledgement that the speed cushions may help. And some more support for the speed cushions being voiced on the chat here. Yes, Randall has another question.
You mentioned Overhill Road. The speed cushions were put there a few years ago. Do you have any data on how much less traffic there is on that road because of it? Not the speeds, but did the traffic move from that road to another through road from Hillsborough to Lone Oak?
That's a great question. We don't have good data on that. It's really hard to measure because, you know, in general, the population is growing and traffic is growing. It also depends on, you know, other routes that could be taken. And specifically, I know that I don't have any data to compare before and after of Overhill, but there could be some diversion of traffic. Hopefully they stay on the larger streets that are you know, meant to carry the traffic like Hillsborough Pike and so forth. But I can't give you an answer on street diversion. It really depends.
I'm just worried that we're not fixing as much as moving the problem. Because at some point we'll spread it all back out to Woodmont and Harding Place. But for now, it's just which street cuts through to get you from Green Hills to 65.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the next one on the map, it seems.
Right. I think the radar feedback signs have been on Overhill for many, many, many years. And that street applied for traffic calming, wanted some more robust traffic calming measures. And so it went through the whole process of the voting and so forth and got the speed cushions installed there. So I might ask, I guess, you know, how would you all like to move forward? Let me go back a couple of slides to our program flow. I'm hearing both things, and I understand the concern about, you know, the cushions being maybe too much, or And then there's also, I'm hearing a lot of favorability to the speed cushions. Um, so, that might vet out in the whole balloting, voting process of what the desire is for the street by large, with the voting. But if we need to adjust the plan, we can. I think at one point someone said, "Can we start with something lower, but less intrusive, and then and see if that works?" The way this program works, because we have so much demand for traffic calming across the whole city, that that would require another application, and then selection would need to then be selected again to receive traffic calming if, say, we did the radar feedback signs and not cushions, and then there was a desire for cushions, or more traffic calming. It would need to go through the whole process again. So I don't want to make the decision, and I don't want to, force you all to make, to stand out and make that decision. But as far as is there a stronger desire for just the radar feedback signs, or do we want to move forward with the plan with the speed cushions and see how that goes? I'm seeing some support on the chat for the cushions.
Amy, I'm sorry, I'm not online. I couldn't get it to come up, but I would be more for the radar than speed cushions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard a few, that might want less intrusive, but it appears that, and what I'm hearing more of is that there's more support for the cushions that I'm seeing in the chat to go forward. So, like I said, that there is an opportunity to vote for or against the plan and the project. So I think that is probably the best solution or step forward is for us to formalize this plan. What we will do is go out and measure the streets and the exact locations of where the cushions would go, and then put that together. It's a several sheet plan, not just this concept that I've shown you. And it'll show how many we're going to use per set, whether that be 2 or 3, and where the signs go and all of that, to give you a good idea of what it would look like if it were to be installed. And then we post those online, so when you get the ballot, that's also accessible. You'll be able to navigate to the plan, to review the plan and vote yes or no. So question is, how quickly could the vote to remove the cushions take? I think we would want it to be in place for a little while, I'm not sure exactly what the, number of months or so forth is, but it would go through that same process of, we would want to hear from several folks that are residents on the street, that there is a strong desire to have them removed. And then we would have to go through the ballot again. So I'm not exactly sure how long it would take, but the ballot period would be that 6-week window again. We haven't, that I know of, had any street have the speed cushions installed and then removed. If that helps answer your question, for the most part, I think we have a lot of people that live on the street that have asked for the traffic calming, that are more or less happy with it and the results. But every street can be different. We do have some streets that we have these meetings, and the desire is not for speed cushions. And then as far as the voting goes, again, that's a 6-week time period. Any other questions? Have, I think, a couple more slides with my contact information and NDOT's traffic calming email address, NDOT.TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. My email address is amybirch@birchtransportation.com. And then I want to direct you to our traffic calming website, TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, or you can use this QR code. There is where you will find the recordings for all of our meetings, the plans that are being voted on or have been voted on for traffic calming. Those are all housed there. Our manual and more details about our toolbox for the program, our tracker map that you can click on the street and see where it is in the program, whether it's in the design phase, the balloting phase, or waiting for construction or complete. Just lots of great information about the program there. The ballot results are posted to this website as well. So what I'm hearing is, I think our best course is just to keep this moving, to get that design finalized. That's about a 2-month period, and then we send the ballot postcards. We will let your council member and applicant know when those ballot postcards are going out, so you can be on the lookout. You can speak with your neighbors, remind them to look for the postcard to vote, and then and just get this moving. And then if the ballot does not pass, say there's not real support on the street for this plan that we've put together, that doesn't mean we're not going to do any traffic calming. What we would do then is a lower measure plan, which would likely include like the radar feedback signs and pavement markings and so forth, but not vertical measures on the street if it were to not pass. Are there any other questions? Does that sound like the best path forward? I appreciate everyone's time this evening. We had a really good turnout. Seeing some thumbs up and thanks. So it sounds like we're in the right direction. So I think that's what we will do. So you can expect to see those plans posted on the website in a couple of months, and then the ballot postcards as well. And we will share that information there. All right. Thank you all. I'll wrap up the meeting then, if there's no other questions. Appreciate your input, and we'll move forward.